Now, we talked about the reliability of food and also the reliability of the rainfall, which leads to or effectively affects the production of the food. Now, an example we can give is when a dry spell sets in, definitely all the vegetation will dry up. When I talk about the dry spell, it means when we have dry conditions, when there is no rainfall for a very long particular duration, when the vegetation dry up, definitely the animals will die in such kind of a system. And if you remember, we talked about the food web, the interrelationships between the animals and the plants in terms of the energy supply through the trophic levels. So if the vegetation have dried up because of the lack of rainfall, then automatically the animals which are depending on such vegetation will also die. But if in such an area the rainfall comes, then automatically the vegetation will start growing, and then that will also lead to more of the animals finding something to eat. Now, the other factor that also regulates the population of a given habitat is the presence of the predators within a given habitat. Now, a predator is an animal that depends on another animal for food. An animal that solely depends on the other animals for food. It eats the other animals. The presence of the other animals is seen as food for them. So, if in a given habitat there is a predator which has entered, let's say for example, if you look at a particular habitat or a forest region where we have the gazelles, and then a lion appears, automatically there will be several things that will take place. One, either the gazelles will run away from that particular habitat, and if they run away, remember that these are grazers. They are feeding on vegetation. So when we have a larger population of the gazelles, it means that particular area has reliable rainfall, has enough food. So if they run away, they could run to places where there is no sufficient rainfall, and therefore inadequate food. So that means they also die wherever they're going. Running away will mean the population in that particular habitat will reduce because the animals are migrating, moving away from that particular part. On the other hand, this animal can also eat some of the gazelles, leading to the reduction in their population. But now, this factor works in the two ways. That when a predator finds enough of the prey, enough animals to feed on, then the population of the prey will keep on reducing as the population of the predator keeps on increasing. Up to a particular time when there will be no more of the prey, then that's the time the predator will also be affected because there will be no food for them. And don't forget, when the number of predators increase, there will be also increased competition because of the depleting number of the prey. Now, presence of the predators, therefore, within a given habitat will definitely pose a very big danger to all the animals which are within such a particular habitat. Animals will definitely run away to find a place which is safer for them when the predators invade a given habitat. I just talked about that when such happens, then the animals will have to look for safer places to be able to hide, and then in return this will lead to a drop in population of the animals in the affected area and an explosion of population in the safer areas where these animals are running to. We have two things here. A predator has come in to habitat A. All the animals have run away from A and gone to B. So it means the population in A has reduced, but the population in B has increased because the animals are running away from the predators. So there will be that kind of a switch in the population. Now, apart from the issue of the food as well as the predators, we also have the diseases which also affect the population within a given habitat. And this normally increase what we call the death rate and the birth rate. How? This mostly happens in what we call densely populated habitats. Densely populated habitats. When we talk about the density populated habitat, I'm referring to the habitats where we have so many living organisms living close to each other, very close together. Such a habitat cannot be able to sustain itself when a disease strikes. Why? Because the living organisms are very close to each other, and therefore there will be a very fast spread of the disease. A case example right now, all over the world, we have the coronavirus. And remember that we'll be talking about social distancing. So the reason why the governments are talking about social distancing is because when people are very close to each other, the spread of this particular disease is much faster when the people are slightly far apart. So we have a case example of how a disease can affect the population growth in a specific area. The population, the disease also spread very fast within areas where the population density is very high. Now, our population can also be increased when the birth rate is much higher than the death rate, because there will be more animals to reproduce. When you have more animals giving birth to the young ones and very few animals dying, then such a population will be able to increase very fast. However, on the contrary, if the animals that are dying are more than the animals which are being born, then that will lead to a decline in the population. So there will be that aspect of what we call mortality rate. Mortality rate. The birth rate being much higher than the death rate. That will increase the population. But if the mortality rate, that's the death rate, is much higher than the birth rate, then the population will drop drastically. So those are the factors which affect the growth of a given population. They work together. You might find maybe one or two factors working together, or almost all of them working together. And remember that these factors depend on the different habitats. For example, when you talk about the predators, this is mostly for the wild animals. I don't think if a human being can become a predator to another one. But unless you as a student have seen one where someone is a predator and the other one is a prey. But because we don't feed on each other, that factor does not apply to the human beings. It mostly applies to the wild animals. Otherwise, almost all the rest, food will also need the food. The wild animals need the food, the plants need the food, rainfall, and so on and so forth. All of them, as well as the diseases. We are affected by the diseases. The animals are also, the wild animals are affected by the diseases, as well as the plants. So thank you very much for your session, and let's meet in the Google Classroom. If you have any questions, reach out so we can be able to discuss and be able to understand it much better. Have a good day.